The situation with Joe Biden has continued to develop since the last video that we produced. A few things have happened. Some of it's funny, so we kind of want to go over it and then talk a little bit about our feelings on the issue as it stands now. Biden on the 3rd of April put up this video where it's kind of an apology. What do you say, Mike? Is it an apology or?
Ultimately, I think it's just kind of a justification of like, here's what I was trying to do. I now understand that the social culture has changed. So, sorry, I'm just trying to be a good guy. But like, it wasn't really it was just like, I'm justifying my creepy behavior.
So he posts this video, and it looks like it was received at least like lukewarm. But then Trump retweeted a video, a sort of like a mock-up, where the creepy Joe Biden comes up. I'll throw it on screen if I can grab it. The creepy Joe Biden pops up, and he's creeping on himself as though he was one of the women from the now sort of infamous pictures that were circulating. And I think it's hilarious. I thought it was really savage, and the response to Trump tweeting that I thought was interesting, and I wanted to discuss it a little bit, because immediately it became this: who are you, saying this to Trump effectively, who are you to throw a stone, so to speak, at Biden? Because here are all of these. There's the grab him by the pussy thing. There was all these different allegations that came out from different women. I mean, and people are posting all of these things in response to Trump's tweet. So my question for you, Mike, is how do you see what Trump did by retweeting this? Like, is it as simple as Trump's a hypocrite, he shouldn't have done this tweet, it's valueless, etc., or is it something different?
Yeah, I mean, first off, the little video is hilarious. I mean, I'll give you that much, and that like you have to watch it. It's hilarious. But that being said, whether or not as they say, people in glass houses should throw stones. Ultimately, I think that's kind of silly. Like, I don't think he's any more crazy to call somebody else out on it, except for the fact that he's obviously doing it for a political purpose and not to say like, hey, what you did was wrong. Ultimately, I mean, I feel like the allegations against Trump were never really investigated to any satisfaction as far as I knew. And now, I assume Biden, somebody is looking into the allegations against him, and who knows if those investigations will prove fruitful. But at the end of the day, like, despite the hilarity of the meme, I think it was absolutely like the worst thing that our president could be doing. Like, as the world representative of America, you shouldn't be slinging memes like hot fire. I just think it's like super tasteless, bad, looks super bad, not a presidential thing to be doing. I think it's like goes against everything that the office is supposed to stand for. It's against the decorum, against the formality, against the respectability of the office, against the diplomacy of the office. Because I mean, if this is how he treats supposedly a fellow countryman, is he doing this sort of stuff behind closed doors to other heads of state? So I just think it reflects very, very poorly overall, and like that's not something the president should be doing.
I couldn't disagree more in this case. You said a lot of things, so I'll try and I don't remember everything that you said, so I'll try and respond to some of it. Phrases that stuck out to me were, it goes against everything the office stands for, and for me, like the office also stands for continuing to increase the military death toll of civilians. It's the same office that is for nuking Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then refusing to admit that it was a cowardly, effective terrorist attack.
I think you misrepresent what I said, because I'm not talking about what the individuals.
Well, I let you have your turn. Let me have my turn.
Go.
So, but I'll respond to what you just said, because I don't think I'm mischaracterizing what you're saying, because you're implying that there is a respectability that is inherent to the office of the president that should be observed, because the conduct should reflect the manner in which they govern. That was your implication. And I'm saying that that's a farce because the office of the presidency is a joke. And so the idea that one should merely not participate in lowbrow culture because one is an elected official is exactly the type of attitude that Trump supporters sort of relish rallying against. And I think that it's the kernel of truth in their insanity, in my opinion at least. It's the kernel of in every bigot has some part of what they're saying is rooted in some reflection of their actual lived experience and understanding of the world. And in this case, I think that it is that in this scenario for Republicans. And so I don't care if the president, I know that every person in Congress, they all swear, they all have probably looked at porn, they've probably all beat off, they've probably all done drugs. And I think this idea that I have to act like I'm above this type of humor merely because I'm an elected official, I think that's a throwback to Kyle Kalinske keeps making fun of it and saying it's from the 90s, but I think it's an even older thing than that. And I don't think the culture has moved beyond the stuffy, I'm a gentleman just because I wore a suit. Like in my mind, there is a fundamental disconnect between you're going to pass laws that are systemically racist, systemically disenfranchise the poor, continue multiple wars. The list goes on of all the horrible things that we do as an imperial state. And then I'm supposed to clutch my pearls if they trash each other in tweets or otherwise engage in what I said before, lowbrow. I guess you could call this lowbrow humor. Do you want to jump in or should I?
No, I have a lot of thoughts there. Because I mean, people like who was it? Not people like Clinton and Nixon and others who have done the various things you've mentioned and been criminals and done bad things. Like we have plenty of examples of them and how they represented us to the world was this person is bad, this person was a criminal, and the sense of Nixon. And it looks poorly on all of America. It looks poorly on American politics. And in the Constitution, the office of president is set out as a foreign diplomat and basically the watchdog of the economy. Those are the powers, and I think that their behavior reflects on our economy and our nation as a whole. They're our world representative. So when he does things like this is the reason that other nations look at us, and now we've lost so much respect, and now other world leaders aren't dealing with us anymore or are looking down at us in certain ways, is because he behaves a fool and doesn't give the respect to his position that it deserves.
I disagree. I do not think that the reason the world does not respect us is because Trump does mean tweets. I think the reason that the world does not respect us is because we supposedly elected a progressive black president, and then he did very little that was truly progressive. And then we elected a far, far right ideologue, and he subsequently pulled us out of the Paris Accords and left a fucking nuclear deal with Iran and did other he's still trying to build this border wall. His antagonism of Mexico in general, and I don't mean the mean tweets. I mean he's on video like 3 or 4 days ago going, trade is more important to me security is more important to me than trade, and made all these threats to Mexico about we're going to sanction this and close this. And then 2 days later, he's back on video going, well, it turns out that trade stuff's pretty fucking important. So we're going to give you a 1-year warning that's really nebulous. And he just had to walk it straight back. Those are actual diplomatic disasters that he's causing. And I think that if we are unable to separate his actual functional policy disasters from, in this case, if this was not Donald Trump, if it was just, for lack of a better name, John Doe, this would just be like a hilarious tweet. And in fact, like I think for me, well, address the point that I just made, and then I'll make another point.
Yeah, well, as I said before, no doubt that meme is straight fire. But honestly, I think like in addition to the policy blunders, like this type of behavior is the continuation of the thing that makes him a bad president. Is that he has no forethought, and he talks like he's the drunk uncle at the Thanksgiving table with no consideration to how reality functions.
Well, what if all of his policy was, we don't have to be crazy about it. Let's say that all of his policy was barely acceptable. He wasn't doing anything outlandish, good or bad. Like he was just a run-of-the-mill president, and we were arguing about nitpicky stuff in that department. But he happened to be vicious on Twitter. I don't think that the world would even give a shit in general. And I don't think that it would have huge ramifications on our world standing if he made a couple mean tweets about CNN, but his other policy was pretty good. Conversely, if he maintained this super polite Twitter persona and then did all of the policy things that he's actually done, then the world would not respect us. And so I guess like the point that I'm making is I don't see a connection necessarily between his engagement with the Twitter culture, because if nothing else, his response is accurate. He's a 70-something-year-old person who just unleashed like one of the sickest burns that I've ever seen. And maybe he didn't even write the tweet. Maybe it wasn't even his idea. Maybe he just like did a thumbs up to a 25-year, 20 or 30-year-old aide or something, and they posted it. I don't know. But nonetheless, if nothing else, his tweet was in line with the medium in which he was expressing himself. And I don't see how that is necessarily connected to the perception of us by the entire world. And I think to make that conflation is to really mask, and I think like I want to see if I can get you to admit, like that's my goal in this rhetorical debate. I want to see if I can get you to admit that the real reason you don't like it is because you want a certain image of your lawmakers, and that's rooted in like an anachronistic fetishization of the suit wearing, pipe smoking, intellectualized political discourse. So. Can you defend yourself against that claim? That's your position?
Yeah, I mean, I won't concede entirely that it's completely rooted in that. Like maybe it has a basis there, but we look at like the senators and AOC and these people. They're slinging hot memes left and right too. The difference here is if you look at other world leaders like Trudeau and Angela Merkel and so on. Like when you look at their Twitter feeds, like they have a certain decorum and a certain thing they're following. And when those are, for all intents and purposes, when those are his cohorts, they, aren't going to take him as seriously if he doesn't present himself as seriously to them. They're the elitist boys club, and he's the country yokel clown that's walking in. And it damages his ability to negotiate with these people because they expect that, regardless of whether or not I believe it's true. We know that's true of those people. We know that they expect him to behave a certain way, and it does damage his ability to work with them.
Okay. Well, that's a slightly different claim, I think, than the one that you made originally. Because originally your claim was that the way that he acted interacting with his own people, because this is an internal affair. Like he's memeing on another politician from our country.
Yeah.
So.
But that office of presidency, that image that you are the president, and like that thing that I'm talking about. It's directly related to his ability to function as a diplomat with all these other world leaders.
I mean, that may be true. Like, that's a point that I might have to crab walk around or partially concede, is that if you frame it in terms of, well, this is the way that the world leaders expect him to behave, that may be true, but again, isn't that kind of bullshit? Like, fuck them? In that sense, purely in that sense, like we're not talking about policy here.
Yeah.
in just merely in the sense that, like, well, if he uses swear words and he's willing to sling mud, and because you know what, Biden appears to be like a really creepy dude. Kalinske put out a video where he highlights like what Biden is saying here, where he's saying, I now understand how these women feel. That is not a good enough explanation for why your hands are always so close to little 4-year-old girls' boobs. It's not even fucking close to good enough. Like it's creepy, like turned up to 10. And so is Trump a hypocrite? Like, fuck yeah, for sure. There's no doubt about that. But he doesn't care. I think that's another part of this type of culture that I feel like I understand a little bit, and I feel like you're ignoring, is that credibility is not on the table as a metric. It's purely like result based. Like the burn was super chili con carne hot.
Yeah, and the credibility thing, like Trump has done everything he can to absolutely destroy credibility. Just with the constant, incessant lying, etc., like a constant attacking in the media, constant, endless stream of just lies and berating. It's eroded any trust or credibility that anyone has in those systems. So, to that end, like, yeah, it's super successful.
And I mean, I also want to point out that we have Biden who he does all of these. His defense is, well, I was super old and out of touch, but I'm learning. But even the video that he took is creepy, and it's like it was on iPhone or something, and just the video is poor, and it's weird and creepy, and I do not get the impression that he understands exactly what's going on, and he voted for the Iraq War. Disqualified. Disqualified.
Speaking of which,
and so these are two pieces of shit, and one of them just trashed the other one. And then his response is to say, well, your manners suck. And it's like, well, maybe Trump's manners suck, and maybe he is. Well, it seems almost certain that he's a misogynist and a sexist. But to my knowledge, there is nothing about Trump like creepily grabbing kids. Although I did see one little GIF of Trump trying to kiss a little baby, and it just it's exactly the same type of thing as Biden, except it was a situation where I think Trump was expected to kiss this baby. But nonetheless, at the risk of rambling, I'll cut it off there, Mike. Go ahead and say what you were going to say.
Oh, I was just going to say maybe now is a good time to transition to Biden's response. Because again, I say what you will about Biden or whatever, but I thought that was a reasonable response. If you're going to respond at all, because it's a bit sarcastic, it's a bit, he's kind of snapping back, but like it's to follow my terminology earlier, it is more appropriate for the decorum of his former office than to come back with like some sassy meme. And so I think that's what I liked about his response, in which he says, "I see that you are on the job and presidential as always."
So granted that he does not come back with his own spicy meme, but like he voted for, or am I crazy here? I feel like this idea that decorum is the issue at hand that decides what is appropriate. And I guess my argument is that policy should be the thing that is up for debate, and this Twitter confrontation should be viewed in terms of what it is.
Yeah.
I think I would agree with you more if they were having this debate in the Senate chamber. If Trump was pulling his phone out of his pocket and saying, look, bitch, I've got this video of you. You're creepy as fuck. And if Biden stood up and was like, lol, LMFAO, you're a douche, and etc., and then posted his own spicy GIF, and they're like fighting each other in front of the Congress with their phones, then I would be like, okay, this is clearly a huge break in decorum. But it's fucking Twitter. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
And Trump proves once again that in the rhetorical game, And in the game of like of public smearing of each other and sparring intellectually, like Trump just absolutely fucking anally devastated Joe Biden in this case.
Oh yeah, and what's interesting is I was thinking earlier, you know, if we're considering decorum is also about, you know, is this appropriate for the situation? And I was thinking about it, and it's like, where would be the appropriate forum for them to have this interaction? And I mean, ultimately, like, yeah, I guess it's Twitter. Like, it makes sense that, like, of all the places this could happen, like, it would be more effed up if it was, you know, on the floor of the, you know, Senate. So, I mean, I guess, yeah. I guess the other thing then that I would want to push back on would just be when, you know, I've talked about this in private before. Like, I want to see more transparency from all of our representatives. I think, you know, if this is where the world is headed, where this is how our heads of state are going to act, then, like, let them all do it. Like,
well, yeah, I've advocated for, you know, not on video or on the record, because there wasn't a record of, you know, up until recently for me. But in you know, my life interactions, I have always advocated for, if basically I would be in favor of public officials having to wear body cams, and they have to be turned on at any time where they are representing the public, at any time where they are effectively doing the job that they were elected to do. It has to be video recorded, especially if it's a closed room meeting.
Especially in Biden's case, I mean, you're going to want a camera on him when he's in a room with someone alone. I mean, look at the guy. He's all creepy and handsy. We need camera and the transparency on these people. And
so then a last little tidbit that I want to throw on at the end is, if you have not seen, and I know I've mentioned it a couple times on the channel, I'm a huge fan of Kyle Kulinski. And so that's probably going to continue happening in the foreseeable future. His thumbnail for his recent video on this has Joe Biden with just these gigantic hands, and it is crispy, and so that's worth taking a look at. But so you admit defeat?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not defeat.
Defeated.